Hi guys, welcome back to Pixel channel. We are here to shoot another, not to say the umpteenth episode on kernel grafting. Unlike other times, however, in this episode we are going to create what we can reasonably define as the definitive guide to kernel grafting. This is because it has now become problematic for users to find all the information that is divided into an almost infinite series of videos that I have uploaded to YouTube so often, and willingly it happens that someone contacts me for ask me something special that I covered in a video. But for obvious reasons it's not that they can spend 10 hours in front of the computer watching all the videos. So now all we have to do is summarize everything we have done and discovered in the last about 8 years in which I started experimenting and putting this methodology into practice. If, on the other hand, you have come to this channel for the first time and you don't know what we are talking about, well, there's no problem, because it's never too late to become a new subscriber to the Pixel channel, so we just have to start a second after the theme song. Well guys, to start making a decent guide, a decent complete tutorial on kernel grafting, we must start from the beginning, also assuming that this video could be seen by someone who has not yet heard of this practice. So the obvious question that the user who does not know and does not know asks himself, could he say how to graft hazelnuts? What's the point then? The polony come up below. Obviously not, because this is done on a hazelnut with a tree like a nut shrub habit. Many people, especially in Italy, even those who cultivate hazelnuts, are not aware of the fact that there are many species of hazelnuts in the world, and not all of them are shrubs. But to get to understand this thing well, let's see a little what was the history of the evolution of hazelnuts.
For most people who have to do with hazel cultivation, especially here in Italy, it might seem obvious that hazel is a shrub plant, but this is not the case for all hazel varieties, since there are also hazel varieties that have evolved as trees and not as shrubs. To get a clear idea of how the history of hazelnut evolution went, we must take a step back in time, to the Eocene, approximately 35 and 50 million years ago, when the first hazelnut plant, Ostreopsis davidiana, appeared on this planet, reasonably and presumably in the area now corresponding to China. Over time it began to spread, evolve and differentiate into many different species. Among the various family groups, 2 of these end up distinguishing themselves by evolving with a tree habit. Group A, which includes all the variants of Corylus ferox and those of Corylus wangii. And Group D, that includes Corylus Colurna, Corylus shockmontii, Corylus fargev, and Corylus genensis, in a divergence from Group C that began about 20 million years ago. Group C, in which Corylus aveana is also present, which makes us understand how high affinity is possible in the graft between the 2 species, despite the marked differences.
So, as we have seen, the hazel has been found in many forms and behaviors in every part of the world, but the species that interests us specifically is obviously the Corylus Colurna, which is the variety, which we say, is more available in this area, although probably other species could also be just as functional but are not available anyway. And in any case, grafting on Corylus Colurna is extensively tested, even if someone continues to define it as an experimental practice. I had practically found the first writings, which I can't remember if they dated back to 2014, 2018, perhaps 2014, which defined it as an experimental practice. Nowadays, even when we talk about it, we still talk about experimental practice, and even in Serbia this thing has been done. It has been said for 50 years in the writings that I had found in 2014. And we are already at 70. I think the trial period is reasonably over. But let's see, what is the Corylus Colurna plant?
Corylus Colurna is one of the largest species of hazel, also known as Turkish hazel or Byzantine hazel. It grows naturally in Turkey, in the Balkan regions and in Western Asia. It can reach 25 or 30 meters in height. With a tree habit, it has a root system that is very developed, both horizontally and vertically, which prevents soil erosion, and makes it much more resistant to drought than Corylus aveana. The roots are not adventitious, i.e. they do not form suckers. Even Corylus Colurna, like hazelnut, is a monoecious species, that is, with male and female flowers, present on the same plant. The dome of the fruit is very thick and usually does not release the fruits when ripe. The hazelnuts are edible but small in size and with a very hard and thick shell, up to 3 millimeters. It is an extremely long-lived plant. It is estimated that some very old plants in Turkey may be around 500 years old. Fruiting begins no earlier than 10 or 15 years of the plant's life. Being also a very rustic and resistant plant, it is often used in urban trees for its remarkable resistance to smog.
Well, then it all started, let's say about 8 years ago, when I discovered that plants could be grafted. From there all the problems of how to have plants came out, especially. And as a first experiment I had tried to germinate seeds, with little success, except that then I was able to find a reliable and reasonably priced supplier of plants in the Netherlands. So this brings us to the first step, that is, how can you have plants and which are the plants to be grafted? We have two possibilities, considering that the possibilities of having plants are, plants that originate from seed, of course, and whether we buy the plant that originated from seed, or maybe having the opportunity to germinate the seeds ourselves, even if this is much more complicated, and micropropagation plants. And that's it. The possibilities are these: there is a substantial difference between the substantial difference between plants that originate from seed, whether you use seeds, or if you buy them originated from seeds, is that obviously every plant has even very small genetic differences between one and the other, so probably in a plant of plants originated from seed we would not have the same uniformity that we could find in micropropagated plants. So imagine if we already have a whole series of Colurna plants, we take the leaves of the plant that we need it. It seems to us that it performs better in that type of condition, let us micropropagate it. We will have a whole set of better and reasonably uniform plants, assuming that the earth is all the same then, and even if they are micropropagated and absolutely identical, then obviously depending on the composition, exposure of the soil, obviously the growth and shape of the plant will change. The problem is that the plants, micropropagated, are quite expensive. I think we will be about €3 per plant, except that they give it to you in a small jar, which then you will still have to flare, so it is demanding. It must be said that in the orders of Colurna that we do, the plants are selected anyway, and we take the most beautiful plants, so having already discarded all the smaller ones we would still have a certain uniformity. Having said that, now we just have to see the types of grafts and also the particular cases that were presented to me by the person who contacted me, and also the particular cases that I have already encountered, and we are going to analyze them all. Let's start with the technique itself. At the time when I found the first writings, we talked about how plants were made in Serbia and then done in the open field on plants that originated from seed, which were sown on site and grafted with a double-split English graft in spring. This was all that was told in the writing, that was a bit rather skimpy, let's say so. While now the tendency, let's say this, nursery stock of some who do it, is to graft in pots, but we'll understand later why. Then we said that the predominant technique is that of the English double split in spring in Marsa. Subsequently, in the various experiments I had done, I had found a grafter that prevented me from doing it with a knife, with a graft that gives us up and down the same contact surface and length of graft of what we have with the double English split, so with good rooting and excellent precision, excellent speed of execution. And this, however, remains the predominant technique, and it was the one that was already known, that it is then done by machine rather than knife. The technique is another technique that I had found in a video that I saw on the internet that was practiced by a Belarusian gardener, and was that of grafting, so a chip graft, because, small parenthesis, grafting on the kernel works only with a type of graft where the area of the change of the plant remains in contact, so the classic graft as you would do on cherries or plums or on others fruit trees do not work, because the area of the cambium is not in contact, so you have to go and put the severed skin in contact with the severed skin. The two areas of the cambium must be touched, because otherwise the plant does not pick. This is the fundamental assumption of grafting the kernel. As far as spring grafting is concerned, it is essential to understand that the Colurnum plant is decidedly delayed compared to Corylus aviana plants, and any good grafting practice tells us that the part we must put on top of the plant must be further back than the plant below. Now, since the hazel is a plant that does not stop in winter, it is not as simple as grafting the cherry where you get the copper, you put it in the fridge. It is enough that you keep them moist for a short time, that you delay it is fine like this. The problem with the hazel is the problem with the kernel is that it is a plant that does not stop in winter. It continues to bloom and continues to draw water, so we cannot take the kernels and simply keep them in the fridge rolled in nylon, even moist, as we would do with any fruit marza. The solution to this problem, and here I make a parenthesis, In the first writings I had found mentioned the fact that there was a problem of the graft because the scions had to be used fresh, they could not be preserved. Something studied by Professor Oni, but that seemed like a crazy piece of crap to me. To solve this problem I have devised a fairly simple solution. We could define it as extremely wise peasant. It's a bit like keeping a bouquet of flowers, if you put it there dry but if you put it in the water but not. So the solution was to buy a fairly large fridge that could contain plastic baskets where you can insert the hazelnut shells vertically, removed in time, before the buds start to open. This is a period that usually goes, for my areas, at 45 degrees of latitude, around the end, in January or at most 10 to 15 in February, then placed vertically in the basket with 4 or 5 fingers of water inside and closed in the dark in the fridge. The Mars do not dehydrate and are stopped for the time necessary to carry out the graft, when this will be the right time. Now this brings us to what is actually the right time, and here there are some particular complexities. The complexity lies in the fact that with every climatic variation that goes on to unbalance the normal vegetative progression of the plant, we are going to run into a risk of even total failure. Let's give a few examples. It starts to get hot, our colurnum begins to germinate and we go to graft it. But soon after a wave of cold and frost arrives, which stops the plant's vegetative development. Now it is not that because it has gone to -2, -3 the graft is frozen. But that problem, precisely the problem of grafting the kernel, lies in the fact that it is a bit mangy to attack there as a good engraftment. However, even compared to certain other plants, however, the rooting phase is a bit complex. Let's say that when the phase of the engraftment phase, when the phase of incalculation begins, it must not be stopped. If the incalculation phase is stopped, it will not happen. So if there is a cold spell that blocks the vegetation of the plant, the failure will be almost total. Likewise, this has already happened, a particular year that I can't remember what it was, with a particularly rainy spring, and that I had gone to graft before the water, but that time it had rained there for a consecutive week. However, the weather conditions stopped the development of the plant and blocked the growth. Even in that case the failure was remarkable. So the fundamental thing, as I told you, is to keep Lamars in the refrigerator in a certain way and go grafted when the weather forecasts suggest that we would have a cycle of temperatures that will not drop for at least 15 days with the minimum below 5 degrees. It is not possible to say when it may be. It may be in March like April, or as even almost in May. We cannot know this because now the climate is like a rubber ball gone crazy, like magic balls. You never know what it can do. If it rains it won't rain. If it's hot it's going to be like magic balls. Cold. So this is the main problem. Now we won't go into detail about the action of the graft itself because it's not what's important. There are a bunch of videos where I recorded the practice, and if I don't show you the card here, but I'll probably make it appear to you. But so that you avoid interrupting the reproduction of the video, I'll also put the links to all the videos specifying what they cover in the description below, so then if you're interested you can go and see them. And this is with regard to spring grafting, and it is essentially what the Serbs had already invented. And to this we must add another technique that I introduced. That is, I did not invent it because obviously it is a technique. That is, all the grafting techniques have practically been in place since time immemorial, but what makes the difference is being able to think that it could be good. So in addition to the scion graft for spring grafting, I have also introduced pike beak grafting, which seems particularly functional. Unfortunately, the execution is much more difficult than the scion graft. Especially if done with the grafter it can be functional at certain times, but I remember that the execution is complex, so do not rush to make some news. Be on the safe side, do the grafting with a knife, or with the machine, even better, without embarking on amazing undertakings. After you have acquired a certain dexterity and expertise in this regard, keep in mind that I did this thing after years, after having grafted thousands of plants, so there is a bit of knowledge of the thing. Obviously the pikebill graft is on the one hand very similar to the Marsa graft, because anyway, that is, we are going to make a cut and insert the La Marsa inside laterally with a very similar cut, but since it is done on the outside of the circumference, it goes without saying that one part on one side when it adheres well on the other side does not adhere as well, so in any case it is always more demanding than the other graft, and in any case more difficult, and you need a bit of a glance. The other two techniques to know that this time that you can use, are those of the eye graft, So with the vegetating gemma graft I have never come out of it, I have never succeeded. Obviously for all gemma grafts, the T graft is excluded because it is 100% guaranteed that it does not work. I was saying, a Belarusian gardener grafted them with chips, and the peculiarity of the graft he was going to carry out was that he practically barked the entire part of the plant where he went to carry out the graft. This is reasonably assumed to ensure that he could seal the graft well, because on the Colurnum there is the problem of cork that makes it difficult even to tie the graft. Personally, I have never achieved great results with this graft. I had something attached to it, but it is still quite complex. It is certainly more difficult than pike's beak, but in any case it is a graft that you can do in summer if you had done a trick with the spring graft, especially if a plant has been in place. Another graft that is instead particularly functional is a sleeping gem graft that I also introduced myself and no one had ever used before. Even in this case I didn't invent it myself, has existed since time immemorial, and the clove one, although perhaps the term clove is not exactly correct because it is more, let's say, a piece graft, so not a whole clog, as you do on the chestnut tree where maybe you make a complete ring or an almost complete ring, let's say a piece of 1/3. Half the circumference, and this is very functional because the parts of the gearbox are completely in contact all around the perimeter and the attachment is much easier than with the chip one. Also in this case, as far as the grafting period of the summer graft is concerned, the results have been, that is, it turned out to be quite complex and we do not have a definitive answer as to when it is appropriate to do the summer graft. It seems to emerge from all the tests I have done that the right period is due to how early late the growing cycle of the plant begins, so if we have a very early spring and the plant starts to vegetate soon, it will presumably be the 15th of July, if the departure was late from the end of July to the beginning of August presumably. But these are all things to verify, and in any case they are things that refer to my latitude of 45 degrees. For my varieties, I do not have feedback on many other varieties, but above all on other places. This is something that, it is an element that every person must determine for himself. Another type of graft that we say so at the study, there is also funding for those who can find a practical system to carry it out. Let's say this, it is that of the micrograft. The micrograft is something that is done right in the moment of micropropagation, so you go to micropropagate the plant and here with the plant still in a herbaceous state you graft it immediately, as you basically do with tomatoes. At the moment I don't yet know how much this technique is in place or not, but it's something that doesn't leave me particularly excited about a series of elements to which we will refer later. So now that we have determined what, let's say, all the types of grafts are, let's focus a bit on how, when and why, and on all the cases that may occur. So before continuing, I want to tell everyone who wants to try to carry out this practice, not to get caught up in performance anxiety. Now I understand perfectly well, since I've been there too, that as soon as the plants arrive. Now let's assume that you have purchased 1-year seed plants like the ones I order, and obviously you will have the irresistible tendency and the irresistible temptation to graft these plants as soon as they arrive, because you want to see the result. You've never done it and you say, yes, I must try, I must succeed. Unfortunately, as all the tests I have done have shown, although I managed to make the plants that I had grafted take root before planting them, this is an ineffective system that is not desirable. This because the Colurnum plant, despite being a very strong plant, it is resistant and it is a real tree, and precisely perhaps due to the fact that it is a real tree, it has great difficulties to establish itself when it is transplanted. Now if it is only a 1-year plant it will have a level of difficulty 1. If it is a 2-year-old plant it will already have a difficulty level 2. If it is even bigger it will have an even higher level of difficulty to take root, and often and willingly it occurs where during the transplant, that is, after the transplant, the plants remain stuck there and cannot vegetate because they cannot start again with the roots. When this occurs and it is clearly seen that the sap cannot rise to the top of the plant, so maybe it sprouts at half a height or from the bottom but not up at the top, and maybe it loses the upper part. When it is in this condition it can attack or it can even dry out directly. On average during a 2-year plant transplant we have a transplant death that is equal to 4.5%. However, some tests I have done seem to show that the longer the eradication of the plants is delayed and the less death of the plants there is during the transplant. This reasonably leads us to think that at a time just after the fall of the leaves perhaps the plant has not yet collected all the nutrients and substances it needs fall into the autumnal condition, so perhaps this is perhaps more an impression than a certainty, because following a test this has emerged, but a test is not a certainty. The experiment should be repeated several times. Even this year I delayed the eradication again, so next year we will possibly have a confirmation of this thing. So how did I tell you that plants that have just arrived, if you graft them before planting them, probably, or you have a real S, but you have a real S, or the attachment will be almost zero, and in any case then there is always the possibility that in any case the climatic progression will not work for the purposes you think after you have planted them. So you cannot play it by looking at the weather forecasts also, because there is another factor to consider, that the smaller and weaker the plant is the longer it takes to complete the wilting. So if we graft a plant before planting it or just planted it, it will take a time of maybe even 25 days. If it is the plant you have in the nursery from the year before, it will take less than 20. But if it is a 3-year-old plant, maybe only 15 is enough, and it takes better in proportion. The bigger the plant, the faster the inclination is and the higher the percentage of engraftment is high, so please, no performance anxiety. Another reason not to get caught up in performance anxiety is the height at which the graft should be carried out. Now here's the tendency, since everyone thinks that since their grandfather's grandfather kept his plants low, that is, or even with so many restarts, so many poloni, or in any case a monocule pot with a low start, doing something different is wrong. There is also a tendency to believe that, since plants kept as saplings from the point of view of fruiting and perhaps drying are more difficult plants to keep, and it is better to make a pot and then graft the lower plant, but nevertheless this is not the case, because even if it is scientifically proven that the higher a hazelnut sapling plant rises, and in most cases this will tend to lose productivity, this is not what should happen. In our case, since the part of the plant that we have below is a plant which has genetically evolved to become tall, while the part we are going to graft above does not know it is high because it widens directly from above the plant, this does not necessarily entail a loss of productivity. In addition, this obviously allows us to have a sapling plant, but if not a sapling, a raised pot that allows us to work up to the bottom of the plant. This is another advantage of grafting, in addition to that of not having the poloni. But the other undeniable advantage that we have grafting a tall plant, and by tall I mean at least 80 centimeters in height, but why not, even 1 meter, then we saw in some videos that I made, that I also arrived 1.20 1.30 with an experimental line that, by the way, had to pass over electrical wire, so it is something a bit maybe not to be taken as a copy, but it will still be interesting to see what the actual development will be then even at that type of height. In any case, it has become clear and also visually that the graft should be done at least 80 centimeters, because this allows us to avoid even all pruning work. If you open a pot, stay 10 centimeters from the ground and open a pot immediately, however, you must always prune these copper up to a certain height to go near the tractor. If you raise it higher, it must be said that the lower part of Colurna, if not in the first few years when a few sprouts appear on the trunk in the following years, germination will rarely be seen. So this will also prevent you from pruning work. It has also emerged during all the tests and that when the plants are too low in summer and in the event of soil drift they tend to fray. Let me explain better. Let's say that, especially in our areas, where you work in the hills, on a slope, with the rows sideways, first you plant the plants and then you go to level the ground by leveling the ground. You are going to push the earth against the hazelnuts, and going to bury them a little bit if in this case you have grafted them low. Probably the plant has already sunk a bit. When you planted it, why did the earth sink? Maybe you made the holes with the drill. It is the ground, so you find it with the almost flush graft of the ground, the cover, and you risk that the plant will get rid of everything that goes with it. For those who have worked in fruit or in the vineyard, they know what it means, and that is, simply the plant takes root in the upper part and tends to lose the bottom. That by no longer pulling the plant upstairs it starts to make sprouts and there is nothing left that works. So this is a wrong thing, and it is precisely for this reason that I was going to tell you that I am not thrilled with the idea of a micrograft, because a micrograft would remain so low that it would be even below the ground line if not flush with the ground, just as I am not excited about those grafts who invade here at this height always for the same reason. In any case, I'm not excited about potted plants anyway because they give me the idea that the root system will no longer be able to open up like a bare root plant would. Then this may be just my conviction, but anyway, hey, this is it. Now, This year we are going to do a new type of experiment, and with this small parenthesis I am also going to answer some questions that were asked to me by a user whose name now I can't remember. It may be that his name is Lorenzo, who told me that he found plants in a nursery, 2-year-old plants. Even if now I don't know, I'm not going to go down specifically, and so I don't know if they are 2-year-old plants, that is, like mine that come to me that are already a year old and I kept them in the nursery for a year, or if they are plants that have kept 2 years in the nursery and they are already arrived a year ago they sowed them, so I have no idea what they are like. These plants are, however, assuming that these plants are already big enough, and I understand that this user wanted to graft them immediately, as soon as they arrive, and here we face a series of problems, because this user has never grafted before, so there are already all the doubts of the case and going to graft on the spot and immediately, and the thing becomes much more complex because, as I said before, by virtue of the fact that there is this transplant death, this tribulation in the moment in this case, it is necessary to have an eye on what the vegetation of the plant is. First of all, unlike a plant that is already rooted, we should definitely postpone the graft to give the plant time to start up properly. It must be said that the plant will be irrigated beforehand. Now this is a small parenthesis that on a topic that I forgot to deal with first. It is always essential in every type of graft that the plant that is grafted is in juice, that is, it is loaded with water. This is something that normally a spring graft should not worry us, because the rainy season is coming. This is what it would normally be, but because winter has become the dry season for years now, this could be a big problem. Because even if the plants are already rooted, whether they are in the nursery, that they are in place, that they have just been transplanted, it has emerged on various tests that we have done that in a dry year, if the plants are not irrigated before grafting, and before grafting it does not mean 2 hours before. Grafting them means at least 4-5 days in advance, so that they can take charge of all the water, with the time they need to suck it, and certainly not later, as maybe someone has thought of doing. This has already happened too. In these plants the graft will not attack, or in any case the graft will be very scarce. Returning to the problem of this user who has found 2-year-old plants that are already big in this case, and we will see it this spring when I go to do mine. If you have seen the previous videos you will have seen that I went to do a thickening of the plant using plants that were 2 or 3 years old in the nursery still to be grafted and that are to be grafted this spring. In this case we are going to proceed like this. We will delay the graft compared to what would be the optimal period for an already rooted plant, so we will observe the plants when we get to graft. We could say, okay, this one is pulling the sap to the top, it is starting well, we can graft it. This other one is still in stasis, yes, maybe the sap reaches the top but I don't know. The other one is still too firm, this one I don't graft it, the other one I don't graft it. And since I want to graft them tall, this one is too low. It's too fine at the minimum height of 80 centimeters 1 meter that I want to graft, not the graft. I'm waiting for next year. Why delay grafting for a year when a plant is not reaching the height we want? It doesn't have the diameter we want, we don't lose anything. Because anyway the important thing is for the plant to take root. Then even by grafting the next year we will not lose anything in terms of the plant's vegetation. She recovers. It's a bit like shortening the copper to make straighter copper, so to speak. The important thing is that it takes and that it does not dry the plant. And do them all the same. And if there are any doubts, don't take the trouble to ruin the plant because maybe it's already there that it is struggling to attack. You're still going to amputate it. It can't start anymore. It still has to make the graft go bad. That plant dries me out. And so the post-planting graft of a 2 or 3-year-old plant is certainly much easier, and I have already done it before, than a plant that, like those that come to us from the nursery in the Netherlands, is only a year old, but still requires special attention, and it would also be appropriate to have already done some tests before. In this regard, I recommend you for those who have never done it and want to undertake this operation. I would like to suggest that at home you probably already have hazelnuts, so nothing prevents you from grafting the hazelnuts you already have, so you have copper. Some suckers, some polony from the year before, take a Marza. Go there with the knife or the machine, the grafted one, you start doing the tests, so the procedure is always that, and you are already starting to take a little bit of our hand. Concluding that I seem to have said almost everything. Another thing I forgot to say is that obviously you have 2 possibilities, both to prepare the plants in the nursery, and to put the plants exactly on the spot. Before illustrating differences, I want to give you some advice. If you intend to carry on this operation, you have never done it, your result will probably not be 100%. So if you need 300 plants, get 600, because otherwise then you have to order the plants again. It usually always ends up like this. As I said, we have two possibilities, both to do them in the nursery and those to plant them on site. Obviously, if and whenever possible, planting the plants on site is preferable, because in any case we will already graft them when they are more rooted. We should not transplant them, so they will not suffer from transplant death, and in any case, from the last tests I have done, also considering the fact that I myself have improved from the first times, on the plant on site I reached an average of 100% this year of engraftment, when in the nursery it was only of 70%. This is because I grafted the plant in the third year, stronger and taller, and I went to apply different grafts on each plant on the highest branches, so not only on the main trunk, but also on the sides, and this also gives us the possibility of having a reserve marza anyway. If you don't attack the main one, you attack another one. It's not nice because it's always nice to attack the main trunk, but you take what comes, and on these plants I had already carried out grafts to sleeping gem, actually few, that in any case I had attacked quite well, and there were both sips and cloves. Those with sulfur obviously they attacked better, or at least in greater quantity, and especially if you grafted on the spot. If the graft fails, some filches will start below. You keep only a couple and the following year you go and graft those two ricks. If you have time and patience and stubbornness, you will have those plants attacked, all of them. Unless, on the quantity, there may be one that is particularly incompatible, because on all the plants that originate from seed, and therefore we said that they are all a little different, it cannot be ruled out that I had a few that were so mangy that it was impossible to graft it, and then in any case I managed to graft that one too. Trying many times enough I made it attack. Okay, that's it. We went long enough, but that was all there was to say and to know to proceed, and above all for avoid making all the mistakes I had to make, to get to define what is the best procedure to follow. I take advantage of the fact that we went a bit long to respond to an insulting complaint that was made to me in a comment on some video, which said, I asked how to do the kernel graft. I didn't want to hear any small talk. Now, all this chatter is necessary because there are so many things to know, and if you pretend to know how to do it, they only have to tell you what type of graft to use. But then you know it because you are grafters, for goodness sake. And anyway, I just wanted to say that I was not asked anything. If you have problems with Google that doesn't give you the right answers, complain to Google, and not to me. And of course I would also like to tell everyone who wants to try not to give up and not be demoralized by everything that they will tell you, oh no, because those things there, no, they never did it. No, now you let these plants arrive, you will carry diseases, you won't succeed anyway, so your plants will dry out, also the grafts will break, then they don't make hazelnuts. What the hell do bananas have to do? I don't know. And whatever else they can say, because there are people against priori. In this regard, a small pearl, later, I discovered that, and this was perhaps also reported in an article by the Agrarian Informant. It was said that there was still a vivavista in Piedmont that produced this already in a period before 2014, who then discovered that he was a nurseryman from Savigliano who had started decidedly ahead of his time and had to stop because then people didn't buy them anyway, because then it happens that people, oh good, that's so good, this is the future, give me 2 plants so I'll try. But what the hell are you trying? That is, you plant 2 plants, you watch them for 30 years, then you already have 50. When you are 80 years old, do you go and buy the plants to plant them? It is something that is neither in heaven nor on earth. Things are either done or not done. Moreover, as we have also seen in the previous videos, ordering a certain amount of plants and grafting them yourself, however, the cost is lower than a traditional plant. Although unfortunately I am going to say that at the moment the nursery situation is still quite behind and the plants that can be found are quite expensive, and this is because, where it is done in pots on micro-propagated plants, the micro-propagated plant already costs 3 times more than a plant originated from seed, and how many of us start from triple? Then it must be flared, grafted, brought under the greenhouse, moved again. Obviously this is an unavoidably high cost. For the rest, for what we have seen, to do a graft in campo in free environment, there are complexities related to the climate that can also lead to a significant failure of the operation. If the real problem encountered is that in any case, nowadays there are no workers, Let's put ourselves in the shoes of a nurseryman who has always made hazelnuts, and maybe he has never grafted the plants, maybe he is also able to graft them, but he does a certain amount of them, so the time frame to carry out the operation is however quite limited. It is necessary to find specialized labor to carry out the grafting, perhaps in an area where there are no qualified grafters. Then there are those who resort to Mexicans, Chileans. Those maybe arrive by plane. They arrive when they arrive, maybe before a cold wave comes, so it won't attack anyone. The thing has important complexities, if not that in any case, as we have, as I explained in the previous situation, of that nurseryman who had started far ahead of his time, is that then maybe people don't even buy them, because in any case they are suspicious, because in any case it is a new thing, and the farmer with a hardcore does not want, never misses the opportunity, to miss the opportunity to do something new, so. And there are plants that should be done exclusively by reservation, but since first we have to order the plants, first we have to let them do a year in nursery, then we have to graft them, and it goes without saying that the booking should start a long time earlier, and this complicates all things. Well, I would say that there is nothing more to add. I hope this episode was interesting and I hope to have summarized everything there was to know, without forcing you to go hang out all the videos to watch them, and as I said, in the description I will put links on grafts that I made last spring, so that you can see them. Now I am recording on a green screen, but probably as I speak the images of the grafts or photographs of the grafts will have passed as well. In any case, I'll put the links in the description so you can go and see the specific videos of the grafts, in the nursery of the grafts on a larger plant, the pike beak graft, the clover graft, and everything you are interested in seeing, and I hope that it is like this instead of contacting me to ask about the things I had already said in the video, but which I hope to have summarized and explained in this video. Contact me to maybe send me the photographs of the result that you have obtained, which I hope to see sometimes even greater than mine, someone who has done something like what I did, but no one has done better yet, so I expect that some of you will also be able to surpass me. And this will still be a great satisfaction in addition to having made this information available and usable that otherwise was not found anywhere. Well gentlemen, the video ends here. As I said, if you are not yet registered, if you have come here by chance, it's never too late to become a new subscriber, and by activating the bell you will be notified when there will be a new video. So now I greet you and see you at the next episode, always here on the INAPixel channel. Hi everyone.